Welcome back to part 2 of our lecture presentation on management and discipline. And in the previous presentation, I asked you to try to focus on the teaching or instructional component of discipline as opposed to the negative area. As an educator, one of the goals is to provide a safe and positive learning environment for all of the students and not just a small selected group of students. So when you have addressed behavior, management, and discipline, what you're really trying to do is help all of the students learn. A well-managed class provides an opportunity for everyone in the class to develop the skills and the knowledge that they need to continually progress. It also means that you are taking the safety of all the students into consideration, because all you need is one student to be off task or misbehaving to become a safety hazard for others, and the last thing that you want is to be accused of being negligent because it was your lack of classroom management that led to an injury in physical education. Focusing on classroom management also helps you to better organize the class and maintain control of the class. Now, you can see that there are several alignments between these reasons. A better organized and controlled class means improved safety for the students. Improved safety also means more attentive students and increased learning opportunities. And of course, when you must focus on that negative side of discipline, and you will, there's that modifying the unwanted behavior is what you want to do. And this is when there is a direct consequence for the poor student conduct or behavior. And sometimes this is inevitable. Regardless of your initial attempts to manage your class well, there will always be students who seem to have a difficult time following directions. And I'll briefly discuss some of the reasons why students misbehave in a moment. But you'll also need to be aware of how you communicate to your students. Your communication, which is how you speak to the students and the expectations and the personality that comes across, can result in positive student responses or negative ones. And these responses aren't always verbal, sometimes they're behavioral. And there are basically 3 types of teacher to student communications. There's the passive communicator, and this is the teacher who seems to be very shy or timid, unsure about themselves and desiring to be the student's best friend. The passive communicator does everything they can to avoid any type of conflict with a student, and this typically results in the student's lack of respect for the teachers. Students are less likely to listen, less likely to cooperate, or even behave with a passive communicating teacher. The aggressive communicator is at the other end of the spectrum, and the aggressive communicator tends to take the drill sergeant approach. They need to feel in control, powerful, overpowering, and tend to be overly demanding of the students. And students are more fearful of these types of communicators than respectful. And class conduct, performance, things like that are generally focused on pleasing the teacher rather than acquiring knowledge or learning. And then there's the balance between the two with the assertive communicator. And the assertive communicator clearly articulates what they expect. These are those teachers who say what they mean and mean what they say, and still they know how to develop a positive rapport with the students. They hold the students accountable, but they're fair, and the students respect these teachers. They understand that words can have an impact on students' self-perception, on their self-esteem, and on learning in general. So consider how your communication can affect a student's performance, and how you in your own personal management development plan can consider this, and keep in mind that as a teacher you must know how to draw the line between being liked or trying to be one of the favorite teachers, in which you're trying harder to be the student's friend than actually setting up an environment in which you are the teacher, you are the professional, and they need to look to you and respect you for the role that you have. And then you need to hold the students accountable and responsible for their conduct. In doing this, set your expectations for your students' performance and behavior high. Give the students something to strive for, and consistently encourage them to improve and reflect on those expectations, the goals, and the objectives that you've set for them. And when students do misbehave or display some type of unwanted behavior, understand that it's not always personal. Some teachers feel that all students' misbehavior or poor conduct is a personal attack on them, but honestly, students misbehave for a variety of reasons, and very rarely, if ever, are those deliberately and intentionally directed as a personal attack on the teachers. Students will misbehave for several different reasons. Sometimes the student just simply wants to test you. They want to see how far they can go, what they can get away with, what you're going to allow them to do. And so they'll push those boundaries just to test you. Students may also have a learning disability. It may be something that they don't have this filter that demonstrates, hey, I need to show respect, or to demonstrate that respect, or to show that they're following directions, they're listening. They may have some type of disorder that prevents them from doing that, and so it's not directed toward you as well. It could be that the students have low self-esteem, and typically students with low self-esteem tend to act out so they can feel liked or be viewed as liked by other students because they're trying to fit in. Sometimes the students don't understand what your expectations are. As a teacher, we need to recognize this and say to ourselves, well, if the students are misbehaving, or they're not following directions, or they don't seem to understand, how can I put this in a way that is going to help them understand? So it's typically a teacher issue. Sometimes the students are just simply bored, or they don't feel challenged, and this is when you need to set up those personal challenges that helps keep the students engaged so they don't become bored, because boredom almost always will lead to a management issue in a class. Also, students misbehave because in their mind the continual failure that they experience is assigned to say, well, they can't get it. I'm never going to learn this, so why even bother? And so a student will act out sometimes if the challenges are too difficult, if they're set up for failure, if they're set up for embarrassment. Those things, the Hall of Shame type elements, can cause students to misbehave in the classroom, so we need to recognize that as well. Sometimes when the students feel that they are unfairly or poorly treated, they will also act out. And sometimes it's a different type of behavioral problem. Kids experience a lot of things in the home and outside of the school, but they will bring those things into the classroom, and teachers look at it as being a bad student or misbehaving, when in actuality it's often a cry out for help. So try to recognize the different reasons that make students misbehave in the classroom, and don't always take it personal. Look to find out why the student is misbehaving, or why they're acting out, or why they're crying out for help, and why they're doing what they're doing. Now, continue to read through the textbook on this chapter on management and discipline and developing a behavioral management plan for your students in your classroom. But there's something else I want you to do. Part of the assignment for these online lectures is to develop a discussion in response to certain issues. So I'm going to present you with a couple of different scenarios that I want you to read through, and then consider all the different aspects of this scenario, why it's happening, what could have been done to prevent it, what are some things to do to prevent this from happening again, and what you can do or should do in the situation at the immediate time. So let's take a look at the first scenario. Scenario number one is basically a student who is always in trouble, and just basically, I'll just read this for you. Johnny has not cooperated during PE. He constantly jokes around, he misbehaves, and he encourages other students to do the same thing. You, as a teacher, spoke to him on several occasions, but you never sent him to the office, you've never contacted parents, and you've never completed a behavior contract with him. But because of the behavior, he's receiving a failing grade in PE. His parents are angry. They don't understand why he's receiving this grade, and they want you to explain to them. How do you handle this situation? So think about what things you could have done to prevent this. What things you can do right now to address the issue, and what things you can do in the future to make sure that this doesn't happen again. So think about what's going on in here, and then in the Q&A form for scenario number one, I want you to just post your initial response. What is it that you think is going on? What is it that you could have done, can do now, and should do later on to address this issue? So take a moment and write down your kind of response or reflection to this scenario, and thinking about what you can do as far as behavior and management in the classroom to address this issue. Scenario number two, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to post a reflection in the Q&A response form for scenario two. And this one is Luke and Manny. You have two students here. They're extremely competitive, and they've been arguing with each other since you began your hockey unit. Luke became tired of Manny's verbally abusive comments and starts to push him. Manny retaliates by hitting Luke in the ankle with his hockey stick. You didn't witness the hitting, but each one is blaming the other for starting the confrontation. What do you do? Again, address this issue. Now, there are some missing elements, some missing components from both of these scenarios. You don't know the ages of these students. You don't know how serious the situation is. You don't know if there's bloodshed. But I want you to approach this as if there were several different, outcomes. What would you do if, he hit him with a hockey stick and he hurt his ankle severely? Or was it just a tap? Does that make a difference? So think about all the different things that you should do in this given situation, and then provide some corrective responses or suggestions. This is part of your grade for these online presentations to make up for the class meeting time that we're not having. If you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you're not quite sure, always feel free to contact me. Take care.